Hello. What the fuck is going on with this team? That's the simplest way I can put it in front of you. I do not understand how it can be this bad for this long in this portion of the season. Like, I don't want to hear the Stanley Cup hangover bullshit. Don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear any excuses about the injuries anymore because there aren't that many. And maybe the best line consistently tonight was the guys who are here because everyone else is injured. Mason Morelli made the best play of the game. Mason Morelli made the best play of the game. Shout out Mason Morelli. He's doing the shit. Good job, Mason Morelli. Byron Frazee was one of the most consistent players. Probably one of the better centers. William Karlsson was pretty good today, but he was also on the ice for 4 goals against today, which... not good. Not good. I want to start by doing this because to me, it starts with one thing. It's very simple. It all starts with one thing. The entirety of the Golden Knights' history, or at least the recent history, certainly since DeBoer, it wasn't quite this way maybe under Gallant, but certainly since DeBoer, and boy, did it get ramped up since Cassidy, is defending. Keeping the puck out of the goal. Keeping the puck out of the front of the slot. I can't even talk. It's this bad. Right out in front of the goal, which then keeps it out of the goal. Let's go through them. Goal number 1. They gave up 6, so I'll be doing this for a while. So strap in because I've got a lot of these to talk about. Goal number 1. It starts by a play that's the puck kind of thrown underneath the goal. Fine. Golden Knights should be fine. Defenseman goes down there. We're in a good position here. Pretty soft stick check from McNabb. That's not the end of the world. They could probably live with that, but you'd like a better, stronger stick check. Stop that puck from moving. Instead, guy spins off. They move it up the boards. They move it D to D. Now they've got a pretty good look. There's a man in front. Golden Knights are very well set up defensively. Like at that moment, they're in pretty darn good shape, but you don't really have the puck pressure on the defenseman who's about to take the shot, who is Werenski, who is arguably the most dangerous player on the ice on their team. He takes the shot. It kind of flubs. They get a fortunate bounce that it goes right into a stick. Good play to kind of pass it out the back, and the guy slams it home. All in all, that's the best one. That's the best. And we have a not great stick check behind the goal. The empty netter wasn't bad. The not a great stick check there, and then disappointing that one. Now let's go to the bad ones. Number 2, disaster. Absolute disaster. Like lost draw, puck comes down underneath the goal line, and immediately Martinez loses the guy. Like I don't understand what happened there. He does a little shimmy, and Martinez looks like he had never seen it before. He's gone out the back of the goal. So now they've got a player behind the goal, which is a soft spot in the Golden Knights zone defense. When they cannot put pressure on the guys behind the goal, which is typically when guys are able to get away from someone to get there, typically you have a guy on top of them. That's what happened. Martinez loses him. Now they've got a guy behind the goal. Clearly, we can't have Theodore just racing to the back there. It was Theodore on this play, if I'm not mistaken. But he can't just race back there. Either way, he starts to move towards back there by the time Martinez gets back to the front. That we've done a pretty good job on. Now the puck goes into the front, and Martinez, A, doesn't get it on the first play, and then B, on the rebound, can't find it, and he ends up watching it go into the back of the goal. Awful. Absolutely awful. That's pretty much all on one player. Not good at all. Moving on. 3. This one is on more than one player. I can pick on 3. 2-on-2 battle in the neutral zone. Karlsson's one. I do not know at this moment who the other one is because I have not looked at it since then. I'm assuming it's probably one of the other forwards that was playing with Karlsson, but let's move on. It's probably a Matteo or Stevenson. We'll just pass on that for the moment. Let's just look at what happens from there. Now, it's a 2-on-1 against the Golden Knights, and the first player does a pretty good job. Now Karlsson comes in. Now we've got a 2-on-2. When this puck comes out, it cannot come out clean coming towards the Golden Knights zone. Can't happen. At 2-on-1, fine, because we've got 4 other players. At 2-on-2, can't happen. Puck goes over, they challenge, puck comes directly out. Now they've got this easy entry and a pretty dangerous slap shot from a ways away. Like It's got to be a perfectly placed shot. He's got to lean into it. A lot has to go right. However, that's exactly what happened. Third guy, not good on this one, is Aiden Hill. You can't get beat clean there. Like, this is where the goalie that you've paid all this money, that people are having Vezina discussions about, that is the starter for Team Canada in the Olympics, if the Olympics come up, if when we get there, whatever the 4-team thing, you know my point. The best Canadian goalie in the NHL, according to most of the projections, that can't happen. Bail the team out. They get beaten a 2-on-2 in the neutral zone. They have a guy, who is it? Good Branson? Like, this isn't Austin Matthews. This isn't the Ovechkin, Patrick Laine's shot. No, this is Eric Goodbranson. I don't even know if his name's Eric. I don't even care. I don't watch the Blue Jackets. No one should watch the Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are fucking terrible. Nonetheless, Goodbranson gets it, rips it past. That's got to be stopped. Goal number 4. So, by the way, the Golden Knights had tied it up because shout out to Mason Morelli again for helping tie it up. Good job by William Karlsson getting that one to go too. Now they're down 3-2. All right, now we've got to really bear in. We got to really figure it out. Get going here. All right, goal number 4. Golden Knights have a nice look here. We're kind of mid-change with both teams. We got a good look through the middle. Petrangelo's got it with some speed coming through the neutral zone, gets into the neutral zone, and by the time he gets there, he got across the blue line very cleanly. However, by the time he gets there, the gap is good. He gets a little bit across the blue line, the gap is good. Now, puck's got to go in deep, especially if you're Alex Pietrangelo, who is a defenseman who is going to have to defend if we give this puck up. Doesn't happen. Stick check. Now the puck's sitting there at the blue line. Good news. Golden Knights have good puck support on this one because the change happens at a good time. Kolazar's right there. Pick it up. We're in good position. I don't understand what happened there. He just didn't do it. The puck's right there. He's skating directly to it. He just doesn't pick it up. I don't understand it. I don't know what happened there. Absolute disaster. Now, puck comes down the other way. Here's Alex Nylander, another elite NHL sniper from 40 feet away or whatever it was. No, that's not the case. He rips one. Hill misses that one. So that's another one. You could use a bailout. One or the other, it's maybe a 1-goal game instead of now it's 2. Vegas gets back in it again. We're back in it, 4-3. All right, good shape. Here we go. Puck comes flying around the boards in the defensive zone. White Cloud's got a nice, easy play out on it. Misses it. Then puck gets chipped right into the middle, exactly where we cannot allow it, which, again, it's one person's mistake. It's White Cloud along the wall. Can probably snowball. However, puck gets right out in there. We've got a pretty good position there. If they're going to have the puck right there, at least Martinez is right in front of them. The best blocker on the team in regards to blocking shots. Nope. Instead, screens the goalie, shot goes past him, doesn't block it into the back of the goal. Empty net, I didn't really have a big problem with. Wah tries to make a good pass through the middle, through the seam to Karlsson. Doesn't happen. They break it up. They move it out. It is what it is. The Golden Knights are pretty deep in the zone at that moment. I didn't really have a problem with the 6-on-5. Couple of deep shots, whatever, not that big a deal. I didn't think they had a ton of dangerous looks in the 6-on-5. Continues to be a bit of a problem, but as a whole, not really that big of a deal. Now, let's go into all the different things that have caused all of this to happen and what we're going to be looking at moving forward. But first, we're going to say that the Jimmerson Law Firm sponsors all SinBin Periscopes and Twitter Spaces, X Spaces, whatever the hell they call them, Spaces. This season, shouldn't even call them Periscopes, but I do. None of the words are right. So deal with it. They sponsor all of the wrong words that SinBin produces after games, and they are fantastic. The Jimmerson Law Firm is one of Las Vegas's preeminent law firms specializing in high-stakes business, civil, and family litigation. When winning matters, I don't even have to say it this time. You know it. When winning matters, seek out the Jimmerson Law Firm. Okay, so let's get to some of the numbers, some of the terrifyingly bad numbers. Now, a lot of you probably want to say, well, they were really good off the All-Star break. They're much more banged up this year. Nah, not really. Not really. Mark Stone did not play a single game after the All-Star break. That's the most important one. That's really the most, without a doubt, where we're at. The goalies were all banged up last year. They were playing Jonathan Quick. They were playing Yuri Patera and making all of these first-time opportunities. All of this was happening on the other side of the break. The Golden Knights were 22-4-5. 22-4-5 after the All-Star break last year. Then they went on to go 16-6 into the playoffs. That would put them at 38 10-5. 15 losses in 52 games. In the regular season, 9 losses in 31 games. 9 in 31 games. That is what it looks like to get hot going into the postseason and then be able to go on a run where you play some of the best hockey in franchise history, some of the best hockey we've seen any team play in a long time in the postseason. Instead, this year, out of the break, Golden Knights win the first 2 games. All right, we're in good shape. Mark Stone's in there too. We're in good shape here. No big deal. 2-0? No. 2-7-1 since. They're now 4-7-1 since the All-Star break. That's 8 losses in 12 games. They had 9 in 31 games. So if they are to match last season, which they already cannot do because they only lost 4 games in regulation last season after the All-Star break. They've lost 7 after the All-Star break so far this season. If they are to match it, they will have to lose just 1 game in the next 20. That means they must go 19-0-1 in the next 20 to match what they did last season, to be in the same position that they were going in, 19-0-1. That's not happening. Like, throw it out, not happening. It isn't happening. Best case scenario now is deadline comes, get the deadline guy in. Eichel starts to get a little bit more comfortable. Defense has to figure their shit out in a hurry, and we'll talk about that next. But once we get towards there, they don't have to be 19-0-1. They don't even have to be like 15 wins. Like if they win 11, 12 from here, that's going to be plenty enough points, assuming a couple of the losses come in overtime. That should be perfectly fine. We go from there. We get down there. All right, let's hope that the back end of the season is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins out of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games, right? Like that is the goal. That is what they have to be pushing for. Right now, it's turning things around. The biggest problem, and I talked about this already, I'll continue talking about this, is defending. They're giving up a ridiculous amount of goals. And I know we hear on some of the broadcast, and I will give it to the broadcast today, very little excuses today. A lot of saying, this is what's wrong, these are the issues. But the one that kept coming up that kind of irks me a little bit is, well, when you're not having a good run, every little mistake ends up in the back of your goal. That's not accurate. Like, it's just flat out not accurate. The Golden Knights made plenty of mistakes in this game that did not end up in the back of their goal. And more so, and moreover, the Golden Knights were playing a terrible, terrible Columbus Blue Jackets team. The team is awful. They're not good. One of the worst in the league, definitely the worst team in the Eastern Conference. They are terrible. Like Anaheim, I think is more consistent and better than this team, even though I know the records are about similar. Awful, awful team. And they don't even have their better goalie in. That goalie is bad. The goalie the Golden Knights played against today is bad, not good. And he gave up the Morelli goal really bad. He tried to give up the other goal on the Eichel one. Still don't really understand what happened there. Just falls completely back. Absolute disaster. This team's bad. The Golden Knights did not generate enough. Like just flat out not enough offense. Let's get the numbers because I'm interested now. And I haven't looked at it all day because I don't like to look at the numbers when the team is playing absolutely terrible. 3.04 expected goals. That's not good enough against this team. And that was at 5-on-5. They got a little bit more, 3.22. But if you take the entirety, expected goals, 3.66 to 3.22, they lose. You can't lose on expected goals to a team that is terrible. That is absolutely awful. Awful. Let me take this one. I'll talk about the defense in a second, but let's take this one. Do I see them missing the playoffs? Let me look at the playoffs real quick. So right now, the Golden Knights are pretty cleanly in 4th place in the in the Pacific Division. They are in 7th place in the Western Conference, but Nashville's right there. Both teams have played 62 games. Nashville is 1 point behind the Golden Knights. It's like 0.008 on the points percentage. I can't think of that word for some reason at the moment. The Golden Knights are effectively in a tie for the last postseason spot. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is that the teams behind them, A, all suck, and B, are still kind of pretty far back. So St. Louis is closest. They just won in shootout in Philly, which not good because they were losing in the 3rd period, and then they come back and tie it, and then they win it in shootout. And there was, Philly had a really good chance. I had that on as well. Philly had a good chance. So they have 67 points in 61 games. The Golden Knights have 73 and 62. It's easier to look at points percentage as opposed to any of it. The Golden Knights are 589. St. Louis is 549. So that's 40 percentage points. That is not a lot. We're talking a week. That can be made up pretty quickly. That is if that team continues to play well. The other one, Calgary, basically in the exact same spot. If they were to win today, they are losing right now to Seattle, who is right behind them. They have 65 and 60. So reasonably, I would say they're probably looking at 67 and 60 in 62, also kind of a bit far back of the Golden Knights. I do not think they are going to miss the playoffs. I think these teams are bad. I think St. Louis is likely to sell players at the deadline. I think Seattle will sell players at the deadline. I don't think Minnesota is any good and even a threat at all. I don't think Seattle would have been a threat even if they held on to all their players. The one that potentially could be a bit of a problem is Calgary. They've won 5 straight. They're 7-3-0 in the last 10. If they were to do that again, go 7-3-0 in the next 10, and all of a sudden they have 14 points in their next 10, so they would have 79 in 70. Like, all right, that means Vegas would have to have 6 points in the next 8 games. Not that crazy. So like all of a sudden we're like not that far off. So that's the concern to me. Nashville, I think, so I'm seeing a couple people mentioning Nashville. Nashville, I think, is now in. They've won 8 consecutive games. I think they've now put themselves in a position where they're going to make it. I don't expect them to go back to a point per game through right now. I expect them to actually make it because it's going to take, that would take 2 teams underneath and the Golden Knights to not give there. So I don't think that's going to happen. But I will say, I still think the Golden Knights make it. And the main reason is because I think the cut line is still very low. I think the cut line, I think it's going to take 92 to 93 to get in. Like crazy, I think it's 94. The Golden Knights still have 73 points in 62 games. If they get a point per game from here, which is what they've done over the last 50, I'll go over those numbers in a second. They get a point per game for here, I think it's enough. That's 95. I think that will be enough. But we will see. Defense. So here's the problem, because we can look at playoffs, we can look at the deadline, we can look at all these different things. But the fact of the matter is there's only one goal for this team. The Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup last season. They brought back the entire roster outside of Riley Smith. Literally the entire roster outside of one player. The one player is not even playing that well on the team that he's on. I do like Riley Smith a lot. I still don't think they should have made that decision. Nonetheless, that's the only player that they have lost. That is it. The goal is to win the Stanley Cup. It's not to come close. It's not to make the Western Conference Finals. It's not to win a couple playoff games. It's certainly not to just make the playoffs. The goal is to win the Stanley Cup. So to win the Cup, you must be the best team in the NHL for a 2-month stretch. They have to be the best team in the NHL. They have not been the best team in the NHL at all at any point this season. I'm well aware that they were 11-0-1. I still do not believe they were the best team in the NHL. Last year, down the stretch, they were either 1 or 2 down the stretch. Maybe you could argue 3. They ended up proving it that they were better than the other team. Boston was the one, did not have to play them. They were eliminated in the first round. Edmonton was the other one that was red hot down the stretch. Played them, waxed them. It was a pretty close series, but ended up beating them pretty handily as we found out. Golden Knights have been better than Edmonton. They ended up being better than every other team in the NHL. They have to start doing that. To do that, to be the team that can win the Stanley Cup again, you must. It is not a little bit, or like it has to take a little stride, or this is something they can do sometimes. No, must all the time, every single night. Every single game, defend way better than they have defended this season. And part of it is that pretty much everyone has taken a step back from where they were this season. I will take maybe Shea Theodore has not. Alex Pietrangelo has been awesome, but he was awesome last season. Is he better than last season? No. Alec Martinez is worse, significantly worse. Zach Whitecloud is worse. I think he can play a lot better than this. Nick Hague is worse. Shea Theodore, I think, is possibly better. Braden McNabb, about the same. Arguably, though, maybe a little bit worse. We're not seeing the hits anymore. I don't think he's blocking as many pucks. They're not as dominant on the penalty kill as they had been, certainly in front of the goal. Maybe he is a little bit worse. In turn, that leads to a lot of people looking at the goaltenders. I don't like to look at the goaltenders much because I still argue they would have won with any of the three goaltenders last season. I think they would have won with a bundle of goaltenders moving forward. I absolutely think they would have won with Robin Lehner. I absolutely think they would have won with Marc-Andre Fleury. Most of the goalies that have played the majority of time for the Golden Knights in the history of the franchise, I believe, would have won the Stanley Cup. And the one that had gotten all the games down the stretch would be the one that we would all say, that's the guy. That's what happened with Adin Hill. To me, has been this way. I don't think I've changed all that much. Maybe I'll say a little bit coming out of the deadline, and they were 2-0, and he had a pretty good game there. Maybe a little bit. I'm like, you know what? Maybe this guy is it. Maybe this guy, Adin Hill, is at the top of the league, near the top of the league. I don't buy it. I don't believe it anymore. I didn't really believe it then. I certainly didn't believe it all through last season. I certainly didn't believe it all through the playoffs. I don't believe it when they signed the contract. I don't believe it now. The Golden Knights goalies are good when the team is great in front of them. The Golden Knights goalies are okay when the team is bad in front of them. They are not above average. They're not below average. They're nothing. They're just all right. And that is a problem if you're not going to play at the level that they played to make their run to the Stanley Cup last season, which for 50 games, 22, 22, and 6. That is the Golden Knights record in the last 50 games. 50. Like that 11-0-1 was, we're talking like the second week of November. That's a long time ago. 50 games. You want to blame injuries? 50 games. And most of this, we've said, well, it's because they don't have their sixth defenseman. All this time, Pietrangelo was out, or Theodore was out, White Cloud was out, McNabb, whatever. I can't even remember. Nonetheless, I know Theodore was out for quite a while. Since the six defensemen have been in there, it has been awful defensively. Not just bad, awful. Absolute train wreck awful. Destroyed in the first period by Boston. Destroyed in the third period at Buffalo. Destroyed in the third period against Columbus. Bad. Toronto at home. Minnesota. Nashville. Like, we look at all of these and say, look, this has to improve. And it takes all of them to improve. Jack Eichel isn't fixing this. The rest of the wingers aren't fixing this. Like, do we need Will Carrier back, Pavel Dorofeev back, Brett Howden back to fix the problems of what's going on? No. These guys must be better, or they have to look at bringing in other players. Are they going to do that? I will argue, no, they will not. I do not think anything that has happened in the past 2 weeks will change the Golden Knights front office plan at all. I believe they will go in and buy the best player that they can possibly buy. Now, as the article that I published a little while ago says, I think that what they buy and how long the contract is on the player that they buy will indicate a little bit more of what they think of Mark Stone's health. If they buy 2 deadline rentals and they do not re-sign either of them, then you could probably guess that Mark Stone's coming back. If they do not, if they say, well, we need to get the Pavel Buchnevich, who has an extra year, or the Alex Wenberg, who has an extra year, or whatever, maybe we're going to be a little while before we see Mark Stone again. They have more information than we do. They are probably not going to give us said information. It's going to be hung up in the air. We're going to have to read the context clues. We will see. I believe they will continue to buy a high-level scoring winger. I believe they will continue to look for another penalty killer. I do not believe that they think their defense is a massive problem at this point. I just don't. Do I? Yes, I do. I think it's a problem. Do I think they can correct it with one player? No, because I'm not sure which guy comes out. And you put, like I've seen, we'll put Ben Hutton in. I agree. Ben Hutton should be playing instead of Alec Martinez right now. Ben Hutton is better than Alec Martinez right now. But Ben Hutton hasn't played since basically when they were 11-0-1. Like it's been a really long time since we've been here. seen him. Caden Korzak, not going to be a huge difference maker lifting the level of everyone else. He can do the level of what we saw at different times, but everyone has to get back to where they were, if not better. Because I've made this argument before. The Golden Knights scored a ridiculous number of goals in the postseason last year. They're not going to do that again. They're not going to average 4 goals a game in the postseason again. They're probably going to be a lot closer to 3, if not under 3, because that's typically how this goes. They have to defend. They have to get back to allowing less than 3, more often than not, less than 2, if they're going to win. That is what has to happen. 2, 7, and 1 in the last 10, 12, 16, and 2 in the last 30. It's about defending. It's not about their inability to score. It's not about goalies struggling. The goalies have not helped. I will admit that. The goalies have not been at the level that can bail you out. That's what goalies can do at different times. Elite goalies do that. Marc-Andre Fleury, when he was in the Golden Knights uniform, did that a lot for the Golden Knights. A great example, maybe the best example in franchise history. Robin Lehner did that in Game 7 against Vancouver. Bailed them out. 2-on-1, series over, Game 7. If he doesn't make this unbelievable diving back, big man can move save, he did. They're not getting that at the moment. I don't think you can rely on that with this tandem of goalies. I think you can rely on this tandem of goalies to get you across the line and win you another Stanley Cup if the defense is elite in front of them. What happens at the deadline? Again, I stand by exactly where I thought they were going to do. I think the most likely players are Gensel or Tarasenko. Do I think they can do both? No. I do also think there's going to be another player on top of it. Where we go from there and how much that player fixes things, they won't if it's just about scoring. If they bring in Gensel, he's not going to solve the defensive issues. The team has to play better defensively. I keep seeing the Pacioretty thing. I highly doubt they're going to go down that road. Multiple reasons. One, I don't think it ended all that great with Pacioretty. 2, he didn't have the best things to say about the organization after he left. He wasn't like slamming them, but it wasn't exactly like great stuff that you got to bring him back. It's not Riley Smith. And then there's the Alan Walsh thing. I don't think they want to deal with that again, and they would have to deal with that, and I don't think they want to. And it's not worth the player in this particular case. What does he have, 2 goals since like 3 years ago? Like, I just don't see that happening. And then inevitably he gets hurt again, and then everyone freaks out about that, and that looks terrible. So even if they were to buy that player, they're just setting themselves up to have a problem. That's the other reason why Gensel scares me a little bit. You buy Gensel, he was just hurt. He comes back, he gets hurt again, and it's like, well, what did we do? So that's what concerns me about all of it. I expect them to be active. Oh, one last thing. The one last thing, before I tell you the one last thing that I was thinking about, which I will say, is that the Jimmerson Law Firm presents all SinBin Periscopes and Twitter Spaces this season. So shout out to the Jimmerson Law Firm. No, not the SinBin Law Firm. That would be bad. We would lose everything. When winning matters, seek out the Jimmerson Law Firm. Do not seek out the SinBin Law Firm. We would lose every single time. Here's the last thing that I want to say. I have seen it over and over and over again. And it's dumb. It's just dumb. Making the move now, or like in the next 7 hours, or like right now, oh my God, they lost to Columbus. Get on the phone, call, make the deal. Stupid. Here's why it's stupid. First off, the reason it's stupid is because if you panic like that, the price goes up. If you're listening, thinking about a deal, it looks pretty good, you lose to Columbus, and 5 seconds later you pick the phone up and say, we'll do it now. They're going to say, yeah, actually, that 3rd round pick is now a 2nd, and it's a conditional 1st, actually, if you make it to the Stanley Cup final. It's like, All in all, could they have made a deal a week ago, 2 weeks ago? Maybe. However, the prices are also higher then. Now, stepping right into the here and now, March 4th, 7:40 p.m. As of right now, if they make a deal right now or any time between now and about midnight on Wednesday, maybe it's more like 7 o'clock on Wednesday. Today is Monday, so anytime tomorrow, anytime Wednesday, pretty much, because it's like 10 o'clock Eastern, like 7 o'clock. that player's playing on Thursday. If they do not, we're talking about one game for the new player to play in a brand new situation for one game. If that's the difference, we've got a huge problem. It should not come down to one game. It also should not come down to that particular player changing the organization to a level that all of a sudden they go from 22-22-6, 12-6-2, 2-7-1 to voila, they're dominant. Like, it's just unlikely. And if that's the case, who are we buying and what are we giving up to do this? Look at what happened when Jack Eichel came in right at the beginning. You don't get much better players than Jack Eichel. It did not happen. Mark Stone came in. The Golden Knights down the stretch were not good. He was pretty good right at the beginning there, but for the most part, he wasn't. Like, the team didn't get that much better. They're not buying that level of player, in my opinion. I don't think it's available. I don't think Pavel Buchnevich is that. I'm not even sure they're going to sell Pavel Buchnevich. They're right on the Golden Knights' heels all of a sudden. He's got a year left on his contract. Why not try? That's all I'm saying. Like, all of these things, we're looking at all of them. I just don't understand why everyone keeps telling me they've got to make the deal now. It makes no difference if they make it now or if it gets announced at 12:57, 57 minutes after the deadline, which is going to piss everyone off. I can't wait for that. Super excited about that. The deadline passed. They did nothing. They sat on their hand. No, they're not. They're going to do something. They're going to do something. And so whether it happens in the next 15 minutes or in the next 5 days, 4 days, whatever it is until Friday at March, doesn't matter. It's not going to make a difference. They're either going to beat Vancouver, they're going to play a good game. The new player coming in isn't going to matter. He can help, but it's not going to be the difference between them winning and losing. They're going to have to play significantly better, and it starts with the guys standing directly in front of the goalie. The 6 defensemen that carried this team to winning a Stanley Cup have been nowhere near that level this season. Not even close. All season long. Huge problem. Fix that, and everything else will start to look better. The scoring's there. Everything else will start to look better. Goalies will look better. Forwards will look better. Time in zone will look better. Penalty kill will look better. Everything will look better. Fix that. That is the problem. Podcast tomorrow, and we'll have some sort of Periscope before or after the deadline. I don't know. We'll see how close the deal is made. I'll do it pretty close to the deal if it's not directly on top of the deadline. If it happens sometime on Friday, I'll wait until after we get the press conference on Friday, and we'll do it after that. Otherwise, we'll do it if the deal does come down somewhere around then we will do it right after that deal, and we'll talk about whatever it happens to be and all the things that go along with it. Until then, like I said, podcast tomorrow, game on Thursday. I do not expect to do anything after the game on Thursday because we'll have the deadline right back after that. So that's where we're at. That's it. Good night.